you so much, Dika, for organizing this and for your introduction. Just as a note before we get started, I am working in the common area of my house, so you might see someone come in and out in the background. With COVID, there's not many other places to be, so we're doing the best we can with it. So I just wanted to start out with sharing a little bit about where this kind of art comes from. I grew up in Pakistan, and so that's where I learned to appreciate it. So basically in Pakistan, all of the trucks and buses are painted with these really colorful, vibrant designs, from like top to bottom, front to back. They're covered in these beautiful, brilliant, bright colors. So where did this come from? I actually learned a little bit just preparing for this recently about where it came from. It's been around since the 1940s in the Indian subcontinent. So people started painting these bright colors on their trucks and buses as early as the 1940s. And it started with Sikh transporters, which is a type of religious group, and they started painting pictures or portraits of spiritual leaders on their buses or trucks, and it kind of evolved from there. So basically anything that is important to the Pakistani people began to be painted on these trucks and buses. So everything from landscapes and peacocks and horses and just beautiful nature, to military dictators in the 1960s, to popular speakers, artists, everyone kind of started getting involved on these trucks. And then in the 1970s, it sort of went from just a portrait or picture on the back of the truck to engulfing the entire truck or bus. And so in 1975, there's this newspaper article that was released in Karachi, Pakistan, which is a huge, huge city in Pakistan. And in that article was featured this bus owner describing his bus as the bride. So they really took pride in how these buses began to be decorated from head to toe as if they're a bride getting ready for their groom. If you can move on to the next one, Dika. So by the 1970s, there started to be non-Pakistani figures appearing on these trucks. So everyone from artists to movie people in movies started to appear on these trucks. And today in the city of Karachi, there's over 50,000 people employed painting trucks like this. So it's a really big industry in Pakistan. And truck owners will spend up to $2,500 just to get their truck painted, which according to a Pakistani salary, that's more than 2 years worth of your salary. So people really take pride in it, and that comes back to help the truck owners, because people are more likely to hire a newly painted truck because they think it's in good condition, it's well taken care of. So it's more likely to get their goods to where it needs to be. And then this art form has started to expand as well and to get to more places and onto more things. So this scooter is actually in Paris, and you can see some of the popular truck art motifs and colors on the scooter. And then they're also starting to paint pots and jewelry boxes and different beautiful items with this kind of same vibrant colors and flowers and peacocks and those sort of designs. So today I picked a fairly simple design. The peacock is a very common motif or a very common picture that's seen on these trucks. So I decided to do that. And then this type of rose or flower is also very, very common. And as you can see, there's every color on the in the rainbow on this this beautiful picture. So we're going to do something similar to this. You can see that I've got something sketched out already just because I was going through and practicing how to sketch it out and how to explain in the best, easiest way how to do that for you guys. So we can go ahead and get started. I would suggest if you have this picture, if you could pull it up so you have it somewhere to look at as you're following along with what I do. I always find that in painting, it's easiest to know whatever it is that I'm painting, to have it in front of me. And you want to be looking at what you're painting almost more than looking at your brush or your canvas. So there's just a little tip for you to get started. And like Dika said, there's a few things that I did want you to collect, kind of just to help get this, help walk you through how to sketch it out in the easiest way possible. So I'll start out walking you through how to sketch it, and then we'll get into painting. In between, we'll give you a little bit of break to make sure that everyone's caught up. So I would put your canvas in front of you, and then if you have your dinner plate, this is going to be our handy dandy way of getting a nice perfect circle. So you want it to go right in the middle of your canvas, wherever you want your circle to be, and then we're going to trace around that. I've got mine on an easel, so it's a little bit of a challenge to hold up there, but. And I'm going to be drawing in marker so that you can see it easier. And if you don't have a dinner plate with you, feel free to freehand it. I just find it easier with circles to find a circular object of any sort that I can trace around. So after you've got your circle on there, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and do a larger circle around that. So the initial circle will be inside that. We're going to have all of our design, and then we're going to do a little bit of a border around this design. So what I did was I just came to the sides. I don't know how many of you provided your own canvas, but I'm using a square 12 by 12 canvas, so the circle will fit on there perfectly. But basically what I did was I just came to the top and figured out about how much space I have. So I have about a 1/2 inch border there. I did the same at the bottom, and I just marked that. And then on the sides, I marked that 1/2 inch border. And then you sort of just connect them, trying to keep a 1/2 inch distance from your original line. And when you're sketching, I don't know, I just turn it so that it's easier to keep going around. But when you're sketching, I don't know how much art background you all have, but typically you just want to keep a very light hand, and that will help just come out with a smoother sketch. So I kind of am barely touching my canvas as I do that, and I'm using broad, long strokes. And it doesn't have to be a perfect line. We're going to paint over it anyway, so don't worry about getting it perfect. All you want is kind of a round. We want 2 round circles that are about 3/4 of an inch apart. We'll just wait a couple seconds to make sure that everyone has time to go ahead and do that. After you have those 2 circles drawn, we're going to start marking out the borders of where we want our peacock to be. So a peacock can be a kind of difficult bird to draw, just because at least I find it to be a little bit difficult, but I'm going to try to walk you through it in the easiest way possible. So what we're going to start out doing is, if you look at your picture, and I have mine stuck here to the bottom of my canvas, but if you look at your picture, you want to kind of decide where your head is going to be and where the bottom of the tail is going to be. So I see that my head is kind of at about 11 o'clock if I'm looking at this like a clock, and then the tail is kind of at about 4 o'clock. So I'm looking at this very tip of the tail, and then just the top curve of the head there. So I'm going to go up and I'm going to just mark the top of the head at about, so if here's my 12 o'clock, I'm just going to mark the top of my head at about 11 o'clock, just a couple inches inside of your border there. And then I'm going to come down, and if this is 3 o'clock, I'm going to do the tip of my tail somewhere between 4 and 5 o'clock. So I'm just going to mark the very tip of my tail right there. And again, you want that to be about 1.5 inches or 2 inches in from your border. And then we're going to start connecting those two. So the way I want you to do it is, you're going to start at the top with just a small circle. It's going to be about 1/2 inch around, and it's going to be just the slightest bit of an oval. So you're just going to make a little bit of a circle there where you've drawn the top of your head. And then I want you to come directly down from that a couple of inches at about, we're going to say that's at about where the 7 o'clock was, somewhere between the 6 and 7. And you're going to just mark a little bit of a curve just slightly to the left of your little circle there. And once you draw that curve, you're going to come over here on the other side, and just under about 12 o'clock, a couple inches away, you're going to do this. So I'm going to show you, if you want to wait and see what I'm doing here. Basically, I'm making a big oval, kind of like an egg, right in the middle of my canvas there. And then next to that egg, I'm going to do a slightly smaller egg that's going to overlap with it a little bit. I'm going to pretend it's behind that first egg. If you want, you can draw both of them, and it just makes it easier to draw that circle. So we've got a circle and then 2 eggs now, and what we're going to do is we're going to work on bringing those together. So I'm going to start up at the top of this circle here, and I'm going to come around the border, and I'm just going to make a curve that goes down and follows the neck of my peacock into that first egg. And I would highly suggest looking at your picture if you've got it in front of you, because that will really help you kind of bring that neck in to the body of the peacock here that we're drawing. And then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. We're going to connect that circle down right between those 2 eggs that we've got there. Now we've got the head of our peacock. And then this part can be a little bit challenging, but we're going to draw that wing on the peacock, and we're going to make it look kind of like a hand that starts right here between the 2, comes around. It's kind of like the hand of a clock, and it's going to be pointing just past 3 o'clock. And then the only thing we really have left here is to put in the tail. So that's going to start kind of just under the curve of your first egg. And you're going to bring it down straight a little bit. And then I'm going to come over here just a little bit in from that, because we want that wing to stick out a little bit. So I'm going to come in 1/2 inch or so, and I'm just going to draw it out to that original mark that I made, where I made the corner of my tail. And then we're just going to bring this around in a nice curve up to meet. And there we've got the body of our peacock. And then we're just going to come back and smooth out some of those lines. So if you have an eraser, you can erase some of these lines in here that aren't going to show up. I'm using marker, so I can't do that, but we'll paint over it. And then I'm just going to smooth out this top egg to bring it right into the neck of the peacock. I'm going to draw the plume on my peacock. Just coming off the back of the head there. And then I'm going to put a little bit of a beak on this peacock, just pointing down. And that's really all we need before we get started painting. And then a couple more things that we're going to sketch before we paint. You can see I've got some circles sketched out here. So we're just going to sketch where we're going to put those roses. So I've got a big circle here. And it really doesn't matter too much exactly where those are placed or exactly the size. You kind of just want a general ballpark. I'm going to put another one there. Put my third down here. And I'm going to put one more over here. And that will be the start of our roses there. And then the last thing that we've got to do is the border. So I'm going to come down to the very bottom, and if you look at your painting here, you've got kind of an oval shape there, and then it sort of just comes out. You make these V shapes, and then you add the top to it. So I'm going to come down to the bottom of my painting, and I'm going to make this, I guess, diamond shape there originally. And then I find it easiest to pick my painting up and move it at this point. And basically all you're doing is you're making these V shapes. So I've got a V there, and then I'm going to put the top on it like that, and I'm going to bring it together to join my V. And you can do some of them as a V. The next one I could do as a U. So I'm just going to do a U there that comes down and just touches the top of my last one. And then I'm going to add the same sort of little top in there, and I'm going to bring it together. And the next one I can just do another V shape. And you just want the last one to touch the very top of the previous one. And as it's coming around, you can pick your canvas up and move it. We're just going to keep on doing those V's all the way around. There, I decided to do another U. An upside down U there in the middle, and then you just connect the two. And at the top here, I have a slightly different design. It's sort of like two wings with that U in the middle. So I've got just a little U upside down there. And then I make these two leaf-like wings that join to the ones before. And you don't have to have that. It's just a nice way of connecting the two sides. So I did all the way around one side, and then I can come back and I can turn my canvas like this and sort of do the exact same thing on this side. I've just got this large V shape, and then you're connecting those. And you just bring it around just that inch inside the circle, following that circle that you made with your plate. We're just going to bring that one around to join the top as well. And that is all the sketching we're going to do before we get started painting. So at this time, if you have any questions, if you want me to go over how to draw anything again, if you're struggling with anything, if you want to unmute yourself and ask, I'm happy to sketch it out on a piece of paper if you need. Just let me know where you're at. Are people following pretty well or totally behind?
We're still sketching the border. Your instructions are great.
Great. Yeah, if you know how to do the thumbs up on Zoom, once you're sketched out and ready to move on to painting, just give me a thumbs up so I know where people are at. Also, if you're done with your sketch already and ready to start getting your paints ready, I can talk through how to start that. So basically, if you've got one of the kits, then you've got some of this mural paint, which I really, really like for truck painting because one, it's an acrylic paint, so you can just clean it out with water. It's really easy to clean up. But if it's also very, very bright, and that's a key thing for any kind of truck painting is to have that bright color. So if you got one of the kits, you have this paint in little containers. You also have what I call palette paper in your kit. So you can take that palette paper out. The really nice thing about palette paper is you don't have to clean anything up at the end. You don't have to spend a long time cleaning off a plate or dish that you want to eat off the next day. You can just throw it in the trash and you're ready to do a new painting. So you can buy this in reams of 100, and I love this stuff because once you fill up one, you can just tear it off, throw it away, and you have a brand new palette to start with. So it's got a bit of a waxy finish on it that the paint won't seep through it. So if you get that out and set up in a flat space, and then if you have you're going to need some water and a cup. And once everyone's ready to go, I'll explain what to do with your paints. You're also going to want a little bit of paper towel or a rag if you have one to clean off your brushes.
So far we've had about 3 thumbs ups. So if you, oh, okay, I see a little bit more. So if you're ready to move on to prepping your paint, make sure you give thumbs up.
All right, since we have quite a few thumbs up, I'm going to go ahead and start explaining how to get your palette ready. So if you, just one second. I think if you want to switch Dika to the other palette. Is it still my my painting that's showing up, or the palette, or?
It should be the outline.
Is everyone else seeing my palette? For some reason, I still have the.
We're still seeing the painting.
Yeah, I'm only seeing the painting as well.
There we go. So what I'm doing is I'm just taking each of my colors and putting a little blob on my palette. I've got more white out than I do anything else, just because you tend to use white the most.
Lisa asked, does paint go on the shiny side or the matte?
The shiny side. That's a good question. And I kind of like to have them all in a row across the top, and then I put my white and black elsewhere. You can set it up however you want. I would just advise that you have a little bit of space left over to mix your paints. And then you can also, you have 2 pieces of palette paper, so you can use one to lay your paints out and one to mix your paints if that works well for you. Typically, you don't need quite this many paints. I wanted to do the least mixing with you as possible, so I opted to get 2 different colors of green and also the pink color. Pink is a really difficult color to mix with that kind of vibrancy. And then black, of course, you can make from other colors, but it's just easier to use it out of the jar. So once I've got all of my paints laid out, I'm ready to start painting. So I'm going to take the largest paintbrush that I have in the kit. The kits don't have quite as large of paintbrushes as I would like, but they do have a decently large one. So I would take the largest one that you have. I'm using my own paint brushes, so they're a little bit different, but not too much. You're going to put just a little bit of water on your brush. So you're going to dip it in your water there, and then just dab it off on your paper towel or cloth before you put it in your paint, and that will keep you from getting too much water on your painting.
Can you show us your paintbrush size? Okay. Thank you.
It should be not too much larger than the ones provided in the kits. It's about just under 1/2 inch across. So once your paintbrush is wet, I'm just going to dab it in the black here. See if I can get this set up. So I'm going to get a little bit of paint on both sides of my brush, and we're going to start with the background of our painting. So basically we're just going to paint all around our sketch here. I'm going to start over here, and if you need to use a smaller brush, you can. I prefer to use a large one, but I also don't mind if I paint over a little bit of my sketch. But if you want to use a smaller brush, that's perfectly fine. So I'm just going to paint that whole background black. One thing that helps when you're painting edges is if you just start right along the edge and then you sort of just draw your paintbrush out across it in a smooth line. And I like to, when I'm painting edges, I like to paint, instead of in this direction, I like to use the flat of the brush against the line, if that makes any sense. But again, if it's easier for you with a smaller brush, that's perfectly fine. And I find that I don't really need to use any more water with my brush, that the paint is plenty wet enough to spread well on the canvas. But if you're having trouble at all, or if it seems too dry, you can add more water.
Rebecca? I think we lost Rebecca for a couple minutes. Let's see. Okay, you're back on. I think you're still on mute, but we lost you for a few seconds there.
Okay. Hopefully I'll be able to finish things here. And don't, again, like it doesn't matter too much if you go over the line. Don't be too concerned about that. You generally just want to know where you're going to paint next. So you don't want to cover up all of your hard work, but you don't need to be perfect at this stage. This is probably going to be the most tedious part of our whole painting. The other nice thing about this acrylic paint is that it dries really fast. So when we come in and do our bright colors over top, we're not going to have too much difficulty with them mixing together. I also love to paint with oils, but oils aren't ideal for this type of painting because you want those kind of vibrant, unmixed colors.
How long have you been painting, Rebecca?
I started painting, I've always loved art, but I started painting when I was a 10th grader in high school. I started out with acrylic paints, and then in college while I was doing, well, I discovered oils my senior year of high school and loved that, but then I really got time to develop a little bit more as a painter when I was in college taking my pre-med classes, and I got to take a couple of painting classes, and it was always fun because painting for me is something relaxing. It helps me turn off the thinking side of my brain and just get to look at how the colors and figures show up on the canvas. So when I had big exams coming up, it was always a blessing to me to have to go paint for a little while. My roommates always enjoyed when I had to do that too, because I typically came back in a better mood. So a lot of people say that they're just not artistic, they can't do that. But I would say, like, yes, there is some inherent skill involved in art, but there's a lot that you can learn. And I learned an awful lot from my teachers about just how to plan a painting, how to mix colors together, how to get the colors that I wanted, how to use my brushes, just an awful lot of tips and tricks that have gone a long way for me.
Did you take any classes at UVA like for art, or did you like do that on your own time?
I took classes in undergrad, but I was not at UVA. So. Does anyone else have questions or anything they're curious about whether it's art or Pakistani designs, or while we're kind of doing this tedious part of the painting? I used to not be able to talk and paint at the same time, but sometimes, obviously, that's changed to some extent, so.
Do you have any advice on like how to get started with oil painting? Because I've been painting with acrylic for a while, but like I want to try it.
Yeah, I would say probably the easiest way to get started with oils is to paint with someone who kind of has the things that you need, and can show you how to do that. But the main thing is just you want a good, so you can't clean your brushes out with water, so you need a good solvent of some sort. Turpentine is really smelly, so I don't suggest it. But the other, they have like odorless ones as well that you can buy. You want to get a good soap of some sort to clean out your brushes at the end. And you definitely, I always use a paper towel or a rag to clean off my brushes. But with oils, that's a must-have. You really do want something to wipe off your brushes with. So I would say starting with the right materials is probably the best way to start. And then just experimenting with how every kind of paint kind of goes on the canvas differently. So just experimenting with it. It does, depending on how much solvent, you can use the paint straight out of the tubes, and you can spend anywhere from $100 to thousands of dollars on paint supplies. If I'm getting started, I typically buy a Michael's or Amazon or any kind of art supply store typically has kits of different colors that are cheaper than trying to buy them separately. So I would buy a kit of small tubes of paint. One of the things with oil paints, here we're using black paint, but with oils, I almost never use black. And one of the reasons for that is because my art teacher in college said, if you look at nature and you look at, unless you're painting something more man-made, if you're looking at nature, you almost never see black. And so if you want to have any sort of dark color, he taught us to mix a very dark brown, and you can make that with blue and a dark brown. One of my favorite colors with oils is called burnt umber. I mix it into almost everything I paint. But I would start out with a good, you don't have to have every color in the world to be able to paint. I can make or mix almost any color I want with a minimum of 10 colors. So you really just need the basics, your primary colors, your secondary colors, and then I would get a burnt umber and a white. But you really can paint almost anything with that.
So Rebecca, someone has a question. Have you painted your car or your own bicycle?
That's a good question. I have painted a barn door in someone's house with this like Pakistani truck design. I'm currently working on painting my siblings' ride-on lawnmower cover with a Pakistani truck design. And one day I'm still planning on painting my brother's tailgate as well on his pickup truck. but haven't had the chance to do that yet. One of the things with painting outdoor things is with the lawnmower, you have to put a primer down to make your paint stick. And then you also have to do some sort of clear coat on top of it to protect it from the weather and anything that might hit it. One thing that I saw a lot in Pakistan that I think is really creative and kind of cool is if you can buy one of those like make your own clock kits, you can paint the background of the clock kind of like this design. This is just a round plate that is painted here. And you can do that sort of design on a clock and then put the hands on it, which I think would be kind of cool. So when you're done painting the background black, you can just clean out your paintbrush and then dab it on your paper towel or cloth until you get a reasonably clean paintbrush. And you can start thinking about what color you want to do the outer corners of this painting. I don't really have any suggestions for you in that. I think you should do whatever color you want. I'm gonna do the outer border blue. And then outside of that, I haven't decided yet what color I want to do.
So Rebecca, Lisa has a question. She says, my black paint is not solid on the canvas. There's some white peeking through. Should it be solid?
Yeah, it should be solid. And part of that is the canvas texture. So I would just make sure you have enough paint on your brush when you're painting, and then just kind of dab it back and forth to rub it into those, into that textured cloth. And as long as you like the look of it on how it's going on, that's fine. It doesn't have to be exactly like mine. But also you can get a little bit more water on your paintbrush and that will also help. Is anyone done with their black paint yet? Do we see any thumbs up on the Zoom? Anyone over halfway there? Okay.
No thumbs up yet.
All right.
We're about 75% to 80%.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, we're like 80 to 90% through.
Same.
I'll take
I'm
a little
about 80%.
Has anyone here never painted before?
I would say I do maybe one painting every 3 to 4 years.
That's awesome.
Finished. Not particularly well, but finished.
Awesome.
Well, now you've got some time to go back and touch things up while we wait for others. And again, this is just the background. We're going to be, the further along in the painting you go, the more careful you want to be with your lines. But at this point, we've got plenty of time to come in over top of that black paint. One of my favorite things to do while I'm painting is to just put on some music. And if you want some more Pakistani culture to fit in with it, you can, if you're ever doing another Pakistani truck painting design, you can put on some Pakistani Coke Studio and listen to some of their music as well.
I'm happy to play something soft in the background that lets us still hear when you have some tips and pointers for us.
Let me see if I can send you a link.
I think I see a Coke Studio album on Apple Music that I can play.
Sure.
Can we all hear it?
हम भी देखेंगे जब जुल्मों से तम के कोहेगरा
Oh, a little loud, Dika.
हम देखेंगे हम महकूमों के पांव तले ये धरती धड़ धड़ धड़केगी.
Yeah, I think that's better. So when you're done with your black, I'm really just going to come back in around the border and I'm going to paint that outer border blue. And I just cleaned out my paintbrush and I'm using the same brush.
बस नाम रहेगा अल्लाह का जो गायब भी है हाजिर भी जो मंजर भी है नाजिर भी उठेगा अनल हक का नारा
When you're trying to make those borders between the blue and black, it's best to kind of just use a long, smooth stroke. And then you can come back in and do it again if you didn't fully cover it. You also want to make sure you have enough paint on your brush when you're making that edge. If it helps, you can pick up your painting and move it to do this border.
जियाकार बनूं सूद फरामोश रहूं जियाकार बनूं सूद फरामोश रहूं इधर पर्दा न करूं मैं भी हमें दोष रहूं इधर पर्दा न करूं मैं भी हमें दोष रहूं क्यों मैं जियाकार बनूं सूद फरामोश रहूं इधर पर्दा न करूं मैं भी हमें दोष रहूं नाले बुलबुल के सुनूं नाले बुलबुल के सुनूं और हम तन दोष रहूं हम नवा मैं भी कोई सुरूह पे खामोश रहूं सुगन है मुझको खामोश मेरी ताब सुगन है मुझको चुरता मोज मेरी ताब सुगन है मुझको शिफा अल्लाह से खाकम बदहन 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 है मुझको बजा है बजा है बजा है बजा है बजा शेवाए तस्लीम में मशहूर है हम है बजा शेवाए तस्लीम में मशहूर है हम किसाए दर्द सुनाते हैं कि मजबूर है हम किसाए दर्द सुनाते हैं कि मजबूर है हम साज खामोश है फरियाद से मामूर है हम साज खामोश है फरियाद से
Rebecca, I was just wondering, I have this kind of color blue. Would that work?
It's hard to see in the zoom, but honestly, like any color of blue, I would just go for it. I think you'll be fine. I'm just using a dark royal blue. So I think you go for it.
Awesome.
आता है अगर लब पे तो माजूर है हम खुदा शिकवाए अरबाब वफा भी सुन ले खुदा शिकवाए अरबाब वफा भी सुन ले खुदा शिकवाए अरबाब वफा भी सुन ले खुगरे हमद से थोड़ा सा गिला भी सुन ले खुगरे हमद से थोड़ा सा गिला भी सुन ले खुगरे हमद से थोड़ा सा गिला भी सुन ले खुगरे हमद से थोड़ा सा गिला भी सुन ले से पहले था अजब तेरे जहां का मंजर कहीं मसजूद थे पत्थर कहीं आबू
Once you finish that, I would clean out your brush again. Is most everyone onto the blue part at this point? Okay.
Yes.
What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and paint my background, and if you're as far along as I am, go ahead and do that. If not, then just skip the background at this point and we'll go on with the design. And then that way, if we run out of time, you can paint the background on your own later.
मालूम है लेता था कोई नाम तेरा तुझको मालूम है लेता था कोई नाम तेरा
And again, you can choose whatever color you want for the background.
मुस्लिम ने किया काम तेरा दीवाने बाजू मुस्लिम ने किया काम तेरा दीवाने बाजू मुस्लिम ने किया काम तेरा दीवाने बाजू मुस्लिम ने किया काम तेरा तो आई आवाज़ क्या कह रहा है दिल देखो क्या कह रहा है क्या मेरी ख्वाहिश है क्या मुद्दा है क्या मेरी ख्वाहिश है क्या मुद्दा है
My colors, the blue and red, are mixing together here at the border a little bit, but I'm okay with that because it adds a little bit of purple color there that's interesting to me.
सफेद से बातिल को मिटाया किसने सफेद से बातिल को मिटाया किसने और नौए इंसान को गुलामी से छुड़ाया किसने मेरे काबे को जमीनों से फंसाया किसने और मेरे कुरान को सीनों से लगाया तुमने हाँ तो आबाओ वो तुम्हारे ही तो आबाओ वो तुम्हारे ही मगर तुम क्या हो तो आबा वो तुम्हारे ही मगर
मायूस जाने को किसने कहा था, मायूस जाने को किसने कहा था, बाजा बाजा हर ऊंचे हस्ती बाजा, कर काफिरो कब्रो खुद परस्ती बाजा, ई दरगहे मां दरगहे नाउमीदीनी सदबार शिकस्ती बाजा, रे मायूस जाने को किसने कहा, मायूस जाने को किसने कहा था, अरे मायूस जाने को किसने कहा था, सुन अक्ल है तेरी सिफात, अक्ल है तेरी सिफात, इश्क है शमशीर तेरी, अक्ल है तेरी सिफात और इश्क है शमशीर तेरी, तेरे दुर्वेश तेरे दुर्वेश खिलाफत है जहां की तेरी, आसिफ अल्लाह के लिए, आसिफ अल्लाह के लिए आग है तकबीर तेरी, तू मुसलमान हो तो तकदीर है तकबीर तेरी, आसिफ अल्लाह के लिए आग है तकबीर तेरी, अल्लाहु अकबर, आसिफ अल्लाह के लिए आग है तकबीर तेरी, मुसलमान हो तो तकदीर है तकबीर तेरी, और सुन की मोहम्मद से वफा सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम, की मोहम्मद से वफा तूने तो हम तेरे हैं, की मोहम्मद से वफा तूने तो हम तेरे हैं, की मोहम्मद से वफा तूने तो हम तेरे हैं, ये जहां चीज है डालो कलम तेरे हैं, ये जहां चीज है डालो कलम तेरे हैं, की मोहम्मद से वफा तूने तो हम तेरे हैं।
Are we done with the black and blue portions yet?
Yes.
Yes.
What color is the background?
So I did mine red. You're more than welcome to choose whatever color you want.
Okay.
But if everyone is done with the black and blue portion, I was actually going to go on to the peacock. And then if you haven't done the background yet, you can come in and do that later. Is everyone ready to do that?
Ready.
All right. So if you want to switch back to the palette, Dika, we're going to start off with the blue part of the peacock. And because I want that blue to really stand out from the black background, I'm going to make my blue just a little bit lighter.
So Rebecca, I don't think I see your palette.
Let me check.
I think your phone went off. There we go.
So I'm just going to mix a little bit of white into my blue here. And you just want it to be a slightly lighter color at this point because we're going to do several shades. So I'm going to make that one, and then I'm going to take a little bit more white. And I'm gonna make a light blue here. Just a little more white. So now I've got 3 shades of blue. Then I'm going to take a bit of a smaller brush. This one's just maybe a 1/4 inch across or so. And then I'm going to start with that dark blue. And I'm going to come in, get my paper towel out of my way so I don't stick my elbow in my paint. And I'm just going to start painting the head of that peacock. And we're also going to paint the body. So everything underneath that long wing that we've got there. And we're just going to paint it with that solid blue color to begin with, and then we're going to come back and do some highlights on it to make it look a little bit more three-dimensional. Pakistani truck art is not ever really, it's not hyper realistic. It is more thematic, but you do want a little bit of highlighting. I'm not super happy with the shape of my head at the top here, so I'm gonna just change that a little bit. I'm gonna do a little bit of a darker blue right in the middle of my body, or of the middle of the neck, just to sort of give it some three-dimensional shape there. And right underneath the eye as well. You don't want the whole thing colored with that dark blue, but just in the very center. I'm going to put a little bit in the belly as well, right up next to that wing. And you probably can't see the difference that that makes on my canvas, but on your own, you probably see a little bit of that. And then once you do that, you're going to take the lightest color and you're going to come in and do a border around the edge of that. So if you need a smaller brush, feel free to get a smaller brush, but we're just going to come around with that lightest color and we're going to do a border all the way around what we just painted. And to give it a little bit of that shape of the belly, you bring the border in to the neck a little bit there, where the neck and the body meet. Probably can't see that on mine, but I'll pick up my phone in just a second and show it to you.
What color are you using for the border?
So I'm using the lightest color of blue that I made. So I mixed 3 colors of, well, I have my original blue, And then I mixed a blue that was a little bit lighter, and then I mixed one with quite a bit of white. That's this brighter sky kind of blue. And I'll zoom up on it with my phone camera here in just a second.
I have the 3 shades of blue showing.
Okay. And I'll just show you kind of how I did that on the canvas here. You can see kind of how that bright blue is just around the edge. While you're working on that, I'm going to grab my cell phone charger real quick because I don't want to lose this second video. Head and body of the peacock. You ready to work on the tail?
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to clean off my brush because we're going to move into green. And we're going to start with a dark green. So we're just going to use the dark green straight out of the kit if you got that. And we're going to lay that into this whole tail area. And this is something that I always, I start from the top and then I draw it down and I use my brush straight up and down like this, as opposed to the flat edge, because I want those lines to sort of look like feathers. And I'm going to bring it from the top of my all the way up to this wing here. You want to be careful at the top to sort of not go over your border too much. And I'm going to bring it all the way out to the bottom. And I don't mind here if the paint goes into the black at the bottom because you want it to look like feathers. So you don't have to worry about getting a nice fine line along the bottom edge. In fact, I'm kind of purposely not doing that. And I'm using a lot of paint with this because I want it to be kind of textured. I want that, I want it to sort of look like a peacock tail. So I'm purposely building up a little bit of texture there. And I'm more frequently refilling my brush. I'll do a close up here so you can see what that looks like on mine. You can see kind of a lot of that texture and how it's coming down into the black a little bit. And once you finish covering it with the dark green, we're just going to go straight into that light green that you have. And I'm going to start over on this right-hand border. I'm just going to draw that down along the edge. And again, you want quite a bit of paint on your brush as you draw that green into the dark underneath it. And here you don't want to mix too much with your brush. You kind of just want to do a stroke and then take it off. Otherwise, you're going to just completely mix the two greens together because we haven't really given it time to dry yet. So you just touch it and then kind of pick your brush back up again. We want that nice feathered look rather than it to all mix together. I'm kind of going to go over the whole thing with that brighter green, and then I'm going to come back along the side here and do it a little thicker on the right hand side. Once you've got that green tail in there, you can clean out your brush again. And we're going to mix 3 shades of brown the same way we did with the blue. So you're going to have your original brown color and then one just a little bit lighter than that and one quite a bit lighter. And again, you're just going to mix white into it to get that color. And it doesn't have to be perfectly mixed together. You can clean out your brush and use that for the brown, or you can use a new brush, whichever you prefer. So I'm gonna start.
If we don't have brown, what color can we mix to make brown?
Brown is one of those colors that you kind of have to mix everything together to get it. It's not the easiest to mix. Let me try something real quick and I'll see if I can instruct you. It's been a while since I've been mixing my paints together. I would start with a green and red and mix those together. And if it's either too green or too red, add the other color. And then you can add a little bit of blue if you want it to be a darker brown.
Could you move your phone up just a little? I think it's caught off the screen.
Can you see that?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so I'm gonna take that brown and bring it into I'm gonna start with just the dark brown initially. And I'm gonna do that top part of the body. And you're gonna want a fairly small brush for this. And here is where you want to be doing careful lines. Then I'm going to get my next lighter brown. And I'm going to come in and do this wing here. And that's not quite as light as I want it, so I'm going to add a little bit more white to it. Then I'm going to come in, I'm going to take my brown and I'm going to mix just a tiny bit of black into it. Black goes a long way in color, so you don't want to mix a lot, just a little bit. To get a little bit of a darker brown than even my original. And I'm just going to make some feather-like lines on this top wing here with that dark brown. And I'm going to make 3 rows of those lines. Actually 4 rows, because I'm going to do a longer one here at the bottom. If you want to clean out your brush or grab a new brush, I'm going to come in with some white.
I think I missed it when you kind of explained what you mixed to get the wing color, but what colors did you mix?
Sure, so I took your brown color and I mixed white into it. So I made a light brown.
Got it.
And then, so that's the base of the wing. And then for the darkest part, I mixed just a little bit of black into the brown color to get you a really dark brown.
Okay, that makes sense.
And that's what's kind of overlaid on top for that feathery part. And I'm just about to come in with a diagonal white line here on top, just to give a little bit more texture. And this is just pure white. And I'm kind of coming down in between those brown marks that I made. I made 3 rows of those brown feathers, and I'm coming in with a diagonal white line on top. Anytime you come in with paint on top of wet paint, you want to make sure that you've got a lot on your brush and you don't want to mix it too much. You want to just like touch the canvas with a very light touch and then you come off of it. Otherwise, you're just going to mix it all together, and that's not what we want right now. So if you've got that picture in front of you, I'm just adding some white in between the dark brown to kind of add to the texture of that wing that I've got there. So you've got 3 colors on your wing here. You've got that base color, which is a mix of white and brown. You've got that dark color, which is a mix of brown and black, and then you've got white on top. And I'm going to come in with a border around this as well with just pure white. I'll do a close-up here of it as soon as I finish to kind of show you what it should look like. And I'm doing a white border along the top of the wing, and I'm actually going to do that dark brown with black across the top of the wing. I'll come in and show you what this looks like if you want to switch to the You can see how those aren't fully mixed together. They're kind of just laid on top of each other. And I'm going to clean off my brush again, and I'm going to come in and do a little white border along the top of that brown, the brown part of the body as well.
Sorry, Rebecca, do you mind showing again with your phone?
Yep, I will do that in just a second.
I think your camera went off again. Oh, Rebecca, I think your camera went off again.
Yeah, unfortunately it drains the battery life. incredibly fast, so I'm gonna have to wait a minute to I can bring it a little closer here and show you.
That works.
I'm just gonna give a little bit of texture in this back, the upper brown part of the body with a little bit of white in there. I'm just barely touching the canvas with that white, just to give it a little bit of texture in there. You just want a little bit of white on your paintbrush. And using the same colors, I'm also going to come in and I'm going to do the plume of the peacock. So I'm going to start with that brown, the plain brown that's in the kit. I'm just going to come in and lay the background of the plume. And again, this is one of those things that you don't have to be perfectly in the lines. You can go over the black. You kind of want that feathery look. And so you're going to start at the head and you're just going to bring it out to the edge of that plume. I'm going to use my lightest color of brown that I mixed with the white to come in and add a little bit of texture at the end of it. And I'm going to draw that into my brown. Just a little light touch. You don't want to completely cover up the brown. And then I'm going to come in with some white. And I'm going to do a edge. Very thin little edge. I'm going to keep dabbing in the white to make sure that I have enough paint to kind of just lay on top of that and not just mix it into it. So every time I put white on the canvas, I'm going to come back and get more white from my palette. Again, I'm just going to add a little bit of texture in there, but barely touching the canvas. I'll give you a close-up there so you can see what I've done. Have people been able to finish their wing?
Yep.
Perfect. Anyone get onto the plume?
Yes.
Okay. I might just keep on going here because I do want to be cognizant of time. So we can make sure we get at least most of the painting done.
And we're recording the session and we should have it available for everyone who wants to go back and look through. in case you miss anything.
So again, I'm actually gonna take that darkest brown that I mixed with the black. And I'm gonna take a real small brush and I'm just gonna lay in the beak with that really dark color. It's almost not even gonna show up against the background. And once I do that, to make sure it stands out, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna pick up some of my white. And with a real small brush, I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna just go around the edges of that beak so that it stands out from the background. And I'm gonna take my brown that I've mixed with the white. I'm just gonna take and do a little dot right where the beak meets the body. And with the same small brush, I'm gonna come in and do the little details that are gonna give us the eye. So you want your smallest brush so that you can really get that fine detail. I'm going to take some white. I'm just going to come in here and do this eye. In fact, I need a smaller brush myself. And the best way to do this is to just look at your picture. And you use just the corner of your brush to do a dot in the middle for your eye. And you've got to do a few of those lines. Down the side to give it that three-dimensional shape. I'll show you a close-up here of what mine looks like. So now we've almost finished our peacock. We're just going to come in to the tail and do some of those bright colors that are in the tail. So I'm using just a medium-sized brush for this. Not the largest you have, not the smallest either. Gonna make sure it's clean. And I'm gonna take that pure pink color. So here's that pure pink. And I'm just gonna make a few ovals down here on the tail. It doesn't matter really where you make them. You can make them wherever you like. At this point, the green is dried quite a bit, so you shouldn't have too much trouble with it mixing. I kind of make a U type shape, so I just pull my brush down and make this U shape. That kind of ends up being an oval. You just do that all the way down. You can see there close up again what I've done. I'm going to take my small brush again. I'm going to mix myself a little bit of that pink with some white to get a nice light pink. The nice thing with this is most of your mixing is really just one color with white. And I'm going to come around and just do an outline along the bottom of that. So I'm kind of doing the same U shape. If I bring it up close, you can see what I've done there. Just coming around the edges of your dark pink. And every time I do one of those, I come back to my palette and I pick up some more paint. So you really want this to be a nice, vibrant color that you're laying on. I'm just going to do that around all of those dark pinks. And then we're going to clean off our brush and we're going to come in with some dots, which is one of my favorite things of Pakistani truck art. So I'll show you how to do this both in the middle and on the outside edge. So I'm just going to get some pure blue color. You can use the dark blue, you can use the light blue, whichever one you want. I'm just going to come in here and take the corner of my paintbrush and just dab it on the paint right there to get a little bit of a blue dot that comes down. I'm actually mixing the dark blue and light blue together and kind of dotting them on there together. There, I'll give you a close-up of what I did there. So you just take a dot and put it in the top of that, those two pink U shapes that you did. And there we finished our peacock. And I'll come in around the edge and show you how I do that as well. So I'm going to take a larger brush for the edge. And they have a yellow color, but I think I'm going to do it with this nice light brown color. And then I'm going to come in and do red on top of that. I'm going to make sure that my paintbrush is nice and clean. I'm just going to pick up a bunch of that light brown that I've made, and I get a lot of paint in my brush for this. Makes it annoying to clean out, but it's best for dots to have a lot of paint. So you just take the corner of your brush, you take one side of it and you just put it down on the canvas and you make yourself a dot. You just do that over and over and over again. And basically, if you want to look up close, they're not perfect dots. They're kind of splotches of paint, but that's kind of how the genre is. So I just take kind of splotches of paint and I'm going to bring it all the way around the border. And you can do them more or less round if you want. I don't really mind, and so I just, this works well for me. And then you come in with a little bit of red and you just make a smaller dot inside that. And again, it doesn't have to be right in the middle. It doesn't have to be perfect. You're just looking for a dot of paint inside the other dot. I would probably typically do the first one in yellow, but I don't have yellow paint in this set, so the brown works just fine for me. I'm going to speed through and give you just a little bit of a tutorial on how to do the roses, because those can be kind of challenging. And the border I may leave for you to fill in that yourself. Basically, you're just going to choose different colors to fill in each of those little V-shaped flowers that you've made, and then do an outline in white. But I'll go through how to do the roses with you. So basically I'm going to start with just a plain dark red straight out of the bottle, and I'm going to fill in these circles with just a red background. I'm just going to go around and fill in all of those circles with some red here. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect, just mostly within your lines there. And once you've got the red filled in, you're going to want a slightly smaller brush, and we're going to go in and do those green leaves. So I'm just going to take some green, the dark green straight out of the bottle. I'm going to come in around the edge of these, and just looking at my picture, I'm going to make a leaf shape, starting at the red and just going out. And I am actually thinking that green's a little bit too dark, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix a little bit of my light green with the dark green, just to give it a little bit more of a, to make it stand out from the background a little bit better. And again, you don't have to perfectly mix those together. If it's not perfect one shade, you'll get a little bit of that variation in color that we do see in leaves. So you're just going to do leaf shapes coming out from that center rose. And it really doesn't matter where you do them. We're just kind of going to go all around that. I always start at the base of the leaf and draw it out to the corner or the tip. That way you can get a nice tip on it. And some of these are kind of round. They're not really leaf shaped anyway. It's not really the focus at this point, so it doesn't really matter too much how you do them as long as they're kind of leafy shaped. And we're just going to do those all the way around. Dika, is it okay if we go over just a few minutes to kind of finish up the painting?
Yes.
don't
And of
want-
course, everyone is free to leave, at any time. Thank you so much for joining in, and we'll make the video available for people to kind of complete their paintings.
If you want to see this up close, I'm kind of just coming in and making leaf shapes all around those round circles. And you can do a few little wispies, I call them. They're just little lines coming off in between. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So we don't, at this point, we don't want to cover up the peacock with anything, but anything else is kind of fair game. I'm going to do a little bit of green in between those dots and the peacock just to sort of draw it all together. And I'm just using all the same shade of green here. So I've mixed my light green with my dark green, and I'm just using that for everything here. And I'm just looking at my painting here and kind of following where they put the leaves. And I pretty frequently go back to my canvas and or my palette paper here and fill up my paint brush with paint again, kind of between every leaf that I do. And once you've got all of your leaves in there, this part might be the most challenging part of the painting, to be honest. But basically I'm going to take the same kind of medium-sized brush. It's about 1/8 of an inch or so. And I'm going to take my red and mix some white into it to make a light red color that I'm going to lay on top to make those rose shapes. And it kind of, this part helps to start in the best place. So I'm actually going to have several different brushes here. I'm going to have a really small brush, and I'm going to have my medium-sized brush. So the really small one is for the middle of that rose. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from the outer edge of the rose, and I'm going to go towards the middle. So I'm going to start right here on this rose, and I'm just going to do a big swooping U around the bottom. I'll bring it close so you can see what I did there. And then I'm going to take and I'm going to do the top part next. So I'm going to do this kind of almost a heart shape at the top. Very subtle. There's a little dimple there just at the top. And then I'm going to come in with my finer brush. I'm actually going to add a little bit of white to it, to my pink. And I'm going to come in and do a really fine, I guess this painting is full of U shapes, but kind of a really fine U shape there in the middle. And then I'm going to do a couple more petals in between to kind of draw it together with that fine brush. And then you want to put in the very center, I'm going to add a little white again. I'm going to just do a little dot in the center of that rose. So you kind of start with the outer portion and then you do that inner portion and then you do a dot in the middle. So we're going to do a slightly bigger rose now. And I'm going to just do those two sweeping sides. And you kind of just make a big swoop around the edge. And then I'm going to do the top. And I got a little green paint on my brush there, so I'm just going to clean it off. And then come back in with my pink and do that sort of U shape with a little dimple on the top. And you can see again there what I'm doing. Then I'm going to come in with my smaller brush. I'm going to make that U shape in the middle. And then I'm going to put a couple extra petals in there in between with that smaller brush. And there you have that rose shape again. I'm going to come in with a bit more white. I'm just going to do a dot in the center. We're going to do the same thing here. Big swooping petal there. I'm going to do one around the outside with that larger brush. And then come in with that smaller one to make a little tiny one in the middle. And that's a bigger rose there, so I'm going to do two of those middle U-shaped things in the middle there, and I'm going to add another big petal at the back. So there you have it. You have all of your roses there around the peacock. And then I'm not going to go through and finish it all, but basically for the outer edges, I would just take your primary colors straight out of the bottle, how you found them. So I'm going to take red here, and I'm just going to fill in this shape with that bright, vibrant red. And you can just leave it a solid color, or if you want to, you can mix, you can highlight it with a little bit Just mix a little white into your base color. And then you can just come in there with a few highlights at the top. And you're going to finish it off by going around the edge with just a little white border. So I'll get a bunch of white on my paintbrush. I'll come down one side. I'll go back for some more white. I'll do that down the other side. And then along the top there. Again, you just want a lot of white on your brush because it will mix a little bit with the red. Unless you want to wait, you can wait and let the red dry and then come back and fill it in with white. And then also one thing I would add is if you feel confident with your lines, you can make a white line sort of between the blue and black all the way around. And it just adds a little bit more interest to that border. So that's how I would finish it off, and I would make sure that you sign the corner so that everyone knows. I always put my initials and then I put the year that I did it so that I remember when I did that painting. So I'm going to stop my painting there and let you all finish it on your own. Unless there's specific questions that anyone wants to know on how to finish it up.
Feel free to ask questions. We'll give about 5 minutes for people to ask their questions, but otherwise, thank you so much for joining in, and thank you to Rebecca for putting this together and volunteering to teach us about Pakistani truck art. But ask questions if you have any. Oh, yes, and I'll just do a gallery view. So however far you got with your painting, if you can just show and we can take a picture of it. One moment.
Can you remind me of what colors you mixed for the rose like petals?
Yeah, so what I did was I just used the plain red for the background, and then I mixed a little bit of white into that red to just get a pink color. So it's really just two colors. I've got red for the background and then a pink to make those petals. And then I just added a little bit of a white dot in the middle.
Okay, thanks so much. I got caught up with the leaves.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, so if everybody wants to hold up what they have so far, we can take a group picture.
Those are beautiful.
Everybody here is such an artist. Oh my gosh.
I love it.
Okay, it looks like I got everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Dika.
Thank you, everybody. This was so much fun.
Thank you all for coming.
We're glad you enjoyed it.